thought it was fascinating that Peter brought up the concept of Google and iPhones and Amazon as being an inconvenient issue. I thought that was kind of fascinating because we realize how efficient they have made our lives. And yet you just saw someone talking about the fact we're just going to get rid of all that and make your life much more easy to contend with. My talk tonight, by the way, deals with something that a lot of people don't have an understanding of, and that's okay. For those who don't know all about me, I am a licensed Florida funeral director and embalmer. Took me 5 years of education to get my mortuary science degree and to perform all of my internship so that I'm fully accredited to embalm a dead body, to inter a dead body, disinter a dead body. And the title of the talk, I actually came up with it while Peter was talking and texted it to the people in the room back there so we could have a title. And the title is, Are We Burying People Alive Today? And burying, by the way, you can substitute the word cremating. Are we declaring them dead? Are we refrigerating them? Are we embalming them, autopsying them while they're still alive? And alive, that has synonyms that relate to the word resuscitatable, meaning are we taking people who could be brought back to life and instead writing them off, burying them, cremating them, taking away any opportunity they have to be resuscitated? And the answer is, well, we've been doing that for thousands of years. I mean, cardiopulmonary resuscitation techniques were discovered a couple thousand years ago. They were perfected a couple hundred years ago, and it wasn't really till the 1960s where it became routine medical practice. And that meant people whose heart had stopped beating were embalmed, buried, autopsied. They were destroyed simply because people did not pay attention to technology that was right before their eyes. It was in the historic record, and they just weren't paying attention to it. Now, a contention that we have long espoused in the cryonics community is that while there are people who do die today without any technology available to resuscitate them, that won't always be the case. Technology, as it evolves, will eventually find cures for virtually every disease that we know of today. It will find ways to repair our cellular structures in such a way that even if there's damage inflicted during the cryopreservation process, we may very well be able to resuscitate them in a similar way that we do when a person has a sudden heart attack or even when they suffer a stroke. Just over the last 3 or 4 years, they've been able to improve stroke therapy in ER rooms, and we introduced that technology a number of years ago. It's called an endovascular thrombectomy. It's the mechanical removal of a blood clot that lodges in the brain. And they used to just write these people off as being brain dead forever, when in reality, if they use a mechanical retrieval clot device that takes that clot out of the cerebral artery, those people restore full functionality up to 24 hours after an ischemic stroke. And what we emphasize is find out what hospital nearest you is thrombectomy capable. In other words, which hospital is able to have the doctors there on the premises to remove a clot that's lodged in your brain so that you don't wind up being buried or cremated or embalmed or refrigerated before you need to be. It's important to know that information. And what we talked about a couple years ago is now conventional practice. Problem is they don't have enough experts at enough hospitals, so we recommend people identify the closest thrombectomy capable hospital to you in case you develop stroke symptoms. That's where you want to go. So we're going to talk about the fact that we don't know at this point how to define brain death. Typical physician will tell you 5 or 6 minutes after complete cessation of blood flow to your brain cells die and they're irreversibly dead. Now, a lot of that has to do with temperature. At room temperature, with no other intervention, for the most part, we can't retrieve those brain cells after that 5 or 6 minute cessation of oxygenated blood. Now, if you lower the temperature, you buy yourself a lot of time. And early research that were done at Cryonics laboratories were able to show that in dogs, you could lower their temperature and get them back after 6 hours, maybe even more, with full cognitive function. And even at warm ischemia, when you perfused them with certain antioxidants and other nutrients ahead of time, you were able to get them back after an hour of warm ischemia, meaning room temperature, they still were bringing those brains back. Well, the problem with those early researchers is they didn't publish the information. And as a result, very few people knew it existed. They didn't understand that brain cells were far more resilient than what we now know. a breakthrough was announced just a couple weeks ago. It made worldwide headlines. The fact of the matter is, in a group of pigs, and the research were at Yale, they took a group of severed pig heads, room temperature, warm ischemia, and after 4 hours, they were able to restore partial neuronal activity in these pig brains that were dead for 4 hours. This, they believe, has now redefined what brain death really represents. This is the Wall Street Journal, but this wound up being published around the world, headline news, and if you missed it, that's okay. There's a lot of news out there. You can't possibly keep up with it all. I happen to be in a community that when something like this is announced, I wind up having 10 or 20 people sending me different articles. These articles were appearing all around the world in the most prestigious publications out there, that the idea that a brain is dead, it's now changed. It's somewhere between that 5 and 6 minutes and maybe 4 hours when a person theoretically could be resuscitatable. And as it relates to cryonics, well, if you're cryopreserved at a temperature below 300 degrees Fahrenheit, there's no more decomposition, no deterioration. You literally have forever for them to develop the technology to restore neuronal function in your brain. This technology, again, shattered beliefs. No one believed this would really happen. We actually discovered it at Cryonics labs in the late 1970s that these brain cells lasted a lot longer than what people thought, except no one did the research with the kind of prestige that the Yale University researchers had. And when you have that kind of prestige, the media pays attention. So every major news source, just a little bit over a month ago, is talking about the fact that we now have redefined what brain cell death really is. And what we redefined it as, we don't really know. We don't really know how long those brains are going to remain resuscitatable. And because we don't know, I choose to be cryopreserved when I die, because I'm going to hopefully garner the benefits of limitless technology in the future. And since there is no molecular motion whatsoever at liquid nitrogen temperature, I have forever to wait. And the cryonics organizations have made plans to make sure that the money is there to keep me cryopreserved. So again, what we thought was impossible just a little bit over a month ago was proven possible. You can restore partial neuronal activity, not the full one, partial neuronal activity in the brains of pigs, head severed, 4-hour delay, and they were able to restore functionality. This is huge. It's an outrageous breakthrough. The media went berserk over it, and we're grateful to be able to say, hey, it just coincidentally, literally coincidentally, we have this event where 54 young cryonicists came to town for our annual Teens and 20s Scientific Symposium, where we discuss and we present findings that most people don't know about yet on how to not die, because none of us want to die. Cryonics always is plan B. Plan A is stay alive, stay healthy. But if that fails, we'll at least be able to take advantage of future technology. This was the 10th annual Teens and 20s event, by the way, and the people who come in are just all 100% brilliant, ahead of their time. They're doing things for themselves to avoid aging that a lot of us older people, and that includes me, I'm 64, they do more than what I'm doing sometimes to not grow old and not suffer the consequences. Now this is a really neat slide. It shows an animation of the restoration of neuronal activity in the severed pig brain heads. This is after 4 hours, and I look at this and I think, wow, that could be me coming back to life in the future. And the way we set our structure up, we try to cryopreserve people immediately upon death so that there is no window whatsoever. But when I saw this slide published in the Los Angeles Times on how the neuronal structure was restored, I thought, wow, I'm seeing it before my eyes. Now, this is the Wall Street Journal diagram of how they were able to restore health to these dead pig brains, restore at least partial neuronal activity. And these diagrams are very similar to what people were publishing in the cryonics community. These are basically schematic diagrams of the different perfusates, the filters, the nutrient, the oxygenation systems. This is eerily familiar, and I say eerily familiar because I'm talking about something that was done in the late 1970s, early 1980s, and it gets published in 2019. It makes international headlines. But this was already being done 30, 40 years ago, and I'm going to at some point get those old Cryonics magazines and compare them to what you're seeing on the screen, because what you're going to see is what the world thought was the first time ever that brains, after 4 hours, had been partially resuscitated. Well, we were doing it after 6 hours of very cold ischemia, and we got the dogs back to completely normal status. And they, in fact, they had all the same personalities, they had their memories, there was no loss of function. So, another topic. Elon Musk, he's a big fan of AI, though sometimes he's one of those people a little pessimistic about it as far as it being too powerful, but I don't agree with him. I very much agree with Peter Voss. We will benefit from AI in a huge, huge way. But what Elon Musk is working on is merging our brain with the cloud, so that we no longer have to carry these ridiculous iPhones around. I mean, they're big and they're bulky, and they gotta be recharged, and we gotta push these buttons. Wouldn't it be better if we had the cell phone simply implanted into our brain? That would be a heck of a lot easier. But as it relates to people thinking, is that desirable? Is it possible? Let's look at someone who's rather successful in life. Steve Ballmer, CEO of Microsoft. I mean, that's a company that's touched all of our lives in a fantastic way. He's worth $47 billion. That's really a lot of money. I mean, he's up there in the top 10, 20 people of people's wealth, at least we know about. Very wealthy, Harvard graduate, CEO of Microsoft. While Microsoft went up as it did in value and prestige, what did he think about the iPhones? What did Steve Ballmer, one of the more brilliant people in the computer industry, what did he think of iPhones? Well, he's rather famous about this. This is what he thought about it. No chance. No one's going to want them. They're bulky. You got no keyboard, battery needs to be recharged every 8 hours. He just said, Microsoft, we have no interest in this because the consumers aren't going to want it. That was Steve Ballmer. Hey, one of the smartest people who I would think has existed, if you want to mean, you could put him in there with all the brilliant people as far as making a lot of money and improving technology. So Steve Ballmer didn't think we would want iPhones. Is there anyone here, by the way, who does not have one? Anyone here? Okay, okay, 2 people, 3, okay, good. There's some people that, you know, don't adapt that quickly, and that's okay. So, that's okay. But what I'm going to present next, you may not accept either. And remember, Steve Ballmer didn't accept the iPhone, and again, we're not all on the same page. Nuno Martins attended the first Teens and 20s Immortality Conference in 2009, and he made a commitment to me. He was in a PhD school at that point. He also was running a successful business in Portugal, a very interesting individual, and he's working with us on a number of projects right now. Nuno Martins, PhD, he promised me he is going to figure out a way in his lifetime to reanimate cryopreserved people. A year ago, or less than a year ago, he cryopreserved his own father. Father died around the age of 58 of metastatic colon cancer. And what's so frustrating about that disease is, just think about it. If you had a colonoscopy every 5 to 10 years, that wouldn't happen. And yet 50,000 Americans still die in this country because they don't bother to get a colonoscopy. A little hint, if you haven't done it, suggest you do it. Because once it's metastatic into your liver, you can live for maybe 3 years and then you can't treat it anymore. Nuno, nonetheless, is dedicated to reanimating people and integrating us into the cloud. He has received a tremendous amount of publicity because he's published some information that's going to allow all of the knowledge in the world, everything that's ever been printed, everything that people can even think about, all that information transferred into our brain on demand. We'll know everything. In other words, we'll be able to use it like we do with our individual consciousness, but we won't say stupid things anymore because we'll know what the facts are. We'll know the date, place, and time of every prior event, so we won't have to make these ridiculous problems. And here's my problem. Here's my problem. This is my apartment. It is filled with boxes of medical journals, scientific publications, articles I just ripped out of the newspaper. It's filled, and I want to read all this stuff, so I don't dare throw it away. But I'm never going to have the time to get to any of this stuff. This is my real apartment. It's why my wife won't let me live with her, really, because this is what I want to do. I don't want to throw anything away. but I know I'm never going to get to read everything in those boxes, and everything in there is important. It's there because when I first read it, I said, I can't forget this. Let me put this on top, and I'll get to it in an hour. And guess what? Something else got put on top of that. Something else on top of that. So this is not a prop. I just took a little iPhone camera and took pictures, and this is how I live. I want that information into my brain. So this information needs to go into Bill Faloon's brain. And a lot of you want to know what's in my brain. You want that information. You ask me a million questions. I'd like to just have you have total access to everything I know. And then I could keep on learning, and you could keep on learning, and we'd have that AI technology that Peter talked about. So what Nuno Martins has done is published a paper, and it made it into the frontiers of neurosciences about the potential of us in our lifetime, within the very near future, interacting with the cloud. Interfacing our brains with the cloud so that we'll be super smart, super efficient, we'll never be ignorant again. And this also garnered international publicity, international attention, that we're basically, in the near future, going to throw away these iPhones, and we're going to have implants in our brain that do exactly what iPhones do, except much more efficiently. It's going to happen, and it'll be rejected in the beginning, just like people did iPhones, and then people slowly accept it. What I'm just showing you are the reports in the media worldwide, and if you missed this, it's okay. There's that much new information coming out, which is another reason why we need this enhanced AI technology implanted into our brains so that we're able to know this stuff. We'll know it when we wake up. Everything that occurred the last 8 hours, it'll be right there. We don't have to go and pick up a newspaper or log onto our computer. It'll just be there, right into our brain. And the attention this is getting, this is what's so remarkable. The neuroscience community realizes this is the next Apple. Think about how much money Apple made because they didn't have Steve Ballmer as a CEO. Just think, if he worked for Apple, he'd say no one's going to buy that iPhone, don't even do it. But because Steve Ballmer worked for a different company, we have iPhones. But this is something that neuroscientists and the investment community are realizing. Whoever perfects this is going to take over a big part of the world, and no one likes to be left behind. They don't want to miss out on the fact that this is going to make more money than perhaps any other technology that's ever been developed. So as a result, it's making media attention, and people are paying attention to it in the investment community. I could go on and on with all these headlines, and I'm going to make this available so you can all see it anytime you want. It's really good material. And again, the Frontiers of Neurosciences, a very prestigious scientific journal. That's why it's gotten all this publicity. It's a peer-reviewed journal, and these scientists are on the verge of merging our brains with the cloud being all the computers throughout the world. I'm going to play a brief little clip, played on Russian TV, by the way, about this. It's one of the better ones out there.
Can you imagine technology that is so advanced it could provide you with instant access to the world's knowledge and artificial intelligence as soon as you think of a specific topic? According to a group of scientists from around the world, humanity could be just decades away from the unprecedented merge of human biology with advanced technology. This prediction is part of research published in the journal Frontiers in Neuroscience. The study looked at the possibility of human-brain cloud interface and how it could be made possible by nanotechnology and artificial intelligence in the future. The scientists said it is conceivable that within the next 20 to 30 years, neural nano robotics may be developed to enable a safe, secure, instantaneous, real-time interface between the human brain and both biological and non-biological computing systems. This level of technology could include brain-to-brain interfaces, brain-to-computer interfaces, and specifically brain-to-cloud interfaces. Technology linking the brain to the cloud could drastically alter the state of communications between humans and machines. So in order for this to become possible, the study noted that data transfer between living human brains and the cloud would likely require the use of supercomputers with artificial intelligence algorithms. While they say that there are supercomputers with processing speeds fast enough to handle the necessary volumes of data right now, they still have to create tiny devices that would be be embedded deep in the brain. The senior author of the study noted that once inside the brain, the devices would then wirelessly transmit encoded information to and from a cloud-based supercomputer network for real-time brain state monitoring and data extraction. Such a breakthrough in technology has the power to transform communications, education, work, and the world as we know it.
To give you an idea about how much excitement this published study generated, the Frontiers of Neurosciences, it has a lot of medical journals. It's got a huge number of them, but more than 90% of all the views of all the Frontiers in Sciences journals were this study. There were hundreds and hundreds of other published studies that were ignored because none of them had the potential to revolutionize every single aspect of our life and make more money than this. So you've got people in Silicon Valley saying, wow, this, if it comes into being, it just blows away everything else. I mean, not just your iPhones, your computers, all the technology that we currently think is great, well, this just blows it out of the water. We have it implanted into our brains, and we're there. And once you see people with it in their brains, you're going to want that same technology. You're going to feel, frankly, left behind if you don't have it. So I always like to conclude my talks by people who maybe could have done something with a lot of money, and they didn't do it. Mr. Allen here, he's a co-founder of Microsoft. He did donate a lot of money to medical research, but not enough, didn't make it his priority. He died. I believe he was cremated. That's ridiculous. $20 billion, and you die of a common disease. There are better ways to treat most diseases than what conventional medicine is able to do. It doesn't mean you ignore conventional medicine, but if your doctors say, we can't do anything more, well, you ought to look in other ways, other directions, other places, and the internet lets you do that quite a bit. But if you've got $20 billion, you should be running full-page ads in a Wall Street Journal, asking people to come forward with what they're doing, and hire a team of PhDs to evaluate it, because I'm almost certain he could be alive right now if he affirmatively hired people and put out advertisements saying, we'll pay you money if you've got something that's going to work. Didn't do it. He's dead. He's cremated. He's gone. I have sympathy for that. I think people ought to be considering other ways to handle their life. Benjamin Franklin, if you ever read a history about him, he did a lot more than just fly a kite and show some electricity coming out of the sky. He set up the post office, discovered the Gulf Stream, enabled our country to win a war, liberated us. Nonetheless, he is quoted in a letter as saying he really wanted to see the future. He knew technology would emerge. He knew this country was going to grow into something spectacular, and he also knew he wasn't going to live very much longer. He wanted to be preserved and then brought back to life in the future to enjoy what was going to happen, but he knew the methods of preservation even weren't going to keep his body intact. Cryonics didn't exist for Benjamin Franklin. It really was only since 1900 that they've had dewars and the ability to have liquid nitrogen available to preserve people. For those who are interested, it's easy to do. There's a group called Alcor, a group called the Cryonics Institute. There are groups forming now that are even preserving brains at even lower costs. It's all out there on the internet. Just Google Cryonics and read all about it. If you want to sign up, prices are getting very reasonable. It's still expensive with Alcor, but there's other groups don't charge much at all. And that is my presentation for this Sunday.